week we are highlighting Meghan Galipeau, who is an educator and dolphin researcher at the South Carolina Aquarium. So welcome, Meghan. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you decided to start working with dolphins?
Yes, so I'm actually originally from upstate New York. So I went to my undergrad in New York at one of the state universities there. Some people might be familiar with the SUNY system if they've ever been to New York. So I went to SUNY Geneseo. And I studied biology there. There was no marine biology option up there in the landlocked part of New York that I was in. No oceans around there. So I studied biological sciences and did my undergrad there. And then went on to do my master's at Florida Atlantic University, which is in Boca Raton, Florida. And I did a master's of science in biological sciences as well. And I did a thesis track. So I did my own research and collected data and wrote a paper, wrote my thesis, which I later published on dolphin behavior in Atlantic spotted dolphins in the Bahamas. So both of my degrees have been in general biology, but I was able to really specialize more in marine mammal science and behavior later on.
That's really cool. So how did you decide to go for marine mammals and specifically dolphins out of all of the other ocean-related things that you could have pursued?
Well, I was that little girl when I was in second, third grade that said, I want to be a dolphin trainer and I want to be a marine biologist and I want to study dolphins. So ever since I was really little, I wanted to do that. I'm just so lucky that I was able to actually do it. I had so much support from my family, my parents in particular, and I was able to really chase my dream. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it really was true for me. And so when I hear people say that now, I want to be a dolphin trainer, I want to work with dolphins and study dolphins or whatever, I say, you really can do that. Like I was that same little girl and here I am, and I've been so fortunate to have done all this work throughout my career. So I just always loved dolphins. I think they're just the most incredible, most fascinating animals. And I love biology and I love the study of behavior. So to be able to put that all has been a really, really rewarding career for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. You are the only person I have known to actually pursue that and be successful in that route. You get people all the time who email me and are like, yeah, so all I want to do is be a dolphin trainer. So how do you guys help me get there? And I don't think people always realize it's a dirty job as well.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work to get there. So
it does, yeah.
How was your dolphin training experience? Where did you do it? And how did you go from dolphin trainer to working at the aquarium?
Good question. So when I was in college, I wanted to get some experience with dolphins and with marine science in general. So I did internships. And one of the places I interned at was called Dolphins Plus Marine Mammal Responder, which is a nonprofit in the Florida Keys. And so I was an intern with them. And that was really my first introduction to what it's like to do that job, because you're right. It's a lot of hard work. It's very competitive. It's a lot of dirty work where you're scrubbing, you're scrubbing fish scales off buckets all day, working outside in hot sun. And so I not only did I love it and got that experience, I was able to get a job there after I graduated. So I was very lucky for that. And that practical experience really helped me get the job. So there I was a dolphin trainer. So I was responsible for the animals that I took care of. I was responsible for their everyday health and care and welfare. I trained them for medical procedures and husbandry behaviors, and I trained them for interactions with people, where they served as animal ambassadors, like the animal ambassadors we have at the aquarium. So people could come down and meet and interact with a dolphin, which is a lot of people, life dream and things like that. I was really lucky to be a part of that. But the other thing that I did was research. So I did some research training, and I also did a lot of observational research, and I just assisted our resident researchers there. So there's a lot of behavior studies going on while I was there, and they continued to do a lot of really cool behavioral work. So I did a lot of just sitting and watching dolphins and recording their behavior. And I did that, a part of that staff for about 4 years full time, and then on and off a little bit after that when I was in graduate school. And doing that, working with animals, working with their behavior, and then just observing and recording their behavior, I learned so much about dolphin behavior. I really attribute a lot of my skills as a wild dolphin research, which came later for me, to what I learned working with the dolphins under human care down in the Florida Keys.
That is really, really fascinating. So
Thanks.
Now that you are at the aquarium, have you been able to see a lot of crossover from the knowledge and the experience that you learned being a trainer versus monitoring and being an educator?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, the thing in my first job as a dolphin trainer, I was really lucky that I got to do a little bit of everything. So I was an educator there, I was a trainer, and I was a researcher. So I got to try out a lot of different things, figure out what I wanted to learn more of, and find out where my strengths really lied. And one of the things that I really realized there is that I love working with the public. So working there was great because I got to do my two favorite things: bring people and dolphins. I got to kind of bring them together, and so I really kind of found my strength as an educator as well. And, you know, kind of moved into that later in my career, but, introducing people to dolphins and getting to work with them really was great to get to do a little bit of everything in that part. So definitely I feel that crossover every day.
Yeah, that's great. So can you highlight a little bit more about what you are doing at the South Carolina Aquarium?
Sure. Yeah. So, and let me also say, I went on to do, but one of the things that also helped me in my career now as a wild dolphin researcher is that's really what I focused on in my master's was doing wild dolphin research. And that's when I worked with Atlantic spotted dolphins in the Bahamas. So that was a really good experience for me that wasn't working with the public at all. It was just working on a boat in the middle of the ocean studying these wild dolphins, which was a real big change for me. And I felt like it was a real deep dive for me, no pun intended, into the world of science and researchers. And after working in the world of, interactions and public education, that was a really big difference for me. And one of the biggest things that I found was that what I felt was that there was a really big gap between the public and their perceptions and knowledge and interests in dolphins and versus the scientific community. And sometimes that gap exists in, I think in lots of different fields between the public and the scientific community. We see that all the time. And I really felt that my place was right there in the middle because, like I said, I love to work with people. I think one of my strengths is as an educator in communicating with lots of different types of people with lots of different types of backgrounds. And so actually getting to get that experience in the scientific field and do that research, gave me the credibility from the science perspective as well. And so I was really able to kind of combine all of those and find myself right in the middle where I could be an educator and teach people and help them understand the science that's being done and, in a way that's understandable and relatable to the general public. So coming to the aquarium was kind of the perfect situation for me because I get to do just that. I continue to kind of fill that gap between, science and the community. So I get to do that every day in all aspects, not just about dolphins, but all aspects of marine animals at the aquarium, which I love and cherish that ability to do so. In working down here, I also was able to meet some of the dolphin researchers in this community, including Dr. Pat Fair, who's been a researcher in Charleston for years with NOAA. And I was able to join her team and assist her team in their projects with photo identification, which I had experience with in my previous jobs, specifically in my master's work. So then I was able to jump on her team as a photo ID, and we go out into the harbor and study the population of resident dolphins here. And we do photo ID, which means we take pictures of their dorsal fins and identify those animals based on the uniqueness of their dorsal fin, and kind of track their lives and track changes in their lives and, different projects we're working on. But we can kind of keep that updated. There's been really great researchers studying these dolphins for many years here in Charleston. And so we were able to kind of continue some of that work and update that photo ID catalog so we know who the heck's out there and what they're doing out there.
That's so exciting.
I don't know if that really answered your question or if I kind of went on an offshoot on that. Sorry.
You answered like 3 of my questions, so that's perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's kind of where I find myself a lot of the time is I really appreciate all of this awesome science and it's fun, right? Like I love being in the field and I love getting dirty and getting close and personal to all this nature. But then you come back to the general public and you realize that like they don't have these emotional connections because all the science is really complicated. And if somebody is bridging the gap in the middle, just like you said, then we're kind of missing the whole point. And conservation is just kind of a moot point, right? So I think that is so important and we fully support you on that one. So
thanks
for doing what you do. So you're talking about you and Pat are out there in the harbor looking specifically at the dolphins in like the Cooper River system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what we've been doing, I've been on her team since about 2014, is, and depending on what study we're doing, we've looked at different areas. But yes, in general, the harbor, the Charleston Harbor, which you can see behind me, as well as some of the estuaries that are connected, Cooper River, Ashley River, Cooper, and the Wando. And that's kind of an area that we've focused on. I mean, there are dolphins, as you know, in a greater area than that, but that's kind of the area that we've looked at. A lot of, because there's a lot of anthropogenic influence, right? So there's a lot of people. This is kind of an industrial area. We've got ports and terminals, things like that. So we look at how dolphins are interacting in that world, how they're living, adjusting to the world of being surrounded by people, which is not uncommon. There's a lot of areas all around the world that have residential animals, bottlenose dolphins or other species. And there's a lot of studies on how the dolphins have adapted to living in an environment so close to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you guys found any like significant findings since you joined the team in the harbor?
I don't think it's just kind of ongoing. I don't think that we haven't published anything yet that's saying this or this specifically is happening. I think we've continued to see a lot of similar things. I mean, Pat has published some work in the past in terms of the contaminant loads that dolphins have that are known to carry here. That's been some long-term work that she's done, and that kind of work has been done in other areas as well. So we do know that dolphins are unfortunately taking on some of those contaminant loads that we see that's as a result of human behavior. So that's not really anything specifically we are looking at. That's kind of some work that Pat has been doing for a long time, among other people. But for the most part, I think it's just continuously a work in progress. There's lots of changes, there's lots of changes all the time to this busy harbor, and keeping up with our changing global economy. And so I think we're just continuing to watch and see how those changes are affecting the animals. As you know, sometimes it takes a really long time to see something happening. You know what I mean? That's the thing about science too, is that it's not always a quick answer. Sometimes it takes a long time to figure the answers out,
Absolutely. So for our folks watching this who might not know, the Low Country is pretty unique because in the Charleston area specifically, we've got about 300 to 350 local, which means born and raised here, Atlantic bottlenose dolphins. And Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're seeing about 100 of those are hanging out in this harbor area where those three rivers merge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that we see about 100 in the harbor, definitely. And and you're right. And our numbers will change and increase and decrease based on the time of year when we see, calving season, when we see our seasonal or, transient animals coming through. But I would say that, yes, we're lucky here at the aquarium. We see them all the time. They're out there having a blast every day. Yeah.
Every day. It's wonderful. Yeah. So that's really awesome because these animals share the coastline, right, with us. And so we're able to learn a lot about our own personal health because they're eating a lot of the same food that we are. So that's really interesting that you guys are starting to look at the toxic loads and everything. Also heartbreaking because,
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's good. We always like to say that what Pat always says is that the dolphins are kind of like canaries in a coal mine in terms of they can alert us to what's going on in the environment because they're at the top of the food chain. So if something's affecting them, it's affecting all levels of the food chain below them. And we humans are also at the top of the food chain. So, like you said, we're sharing a food source with them. We're sharing a lot of habitat with them. I mean, our beaches and our oceans, everyone's surfing, swimming, paddling, and things like that. So if something's affecting dolphins and their health, not only can it tell us what's affecting all of the trophic levels below, but also it's probably affecting humans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump back a little bit to dolphins and human care because you have been in that world and I'm just so curious. What is something that you would like the public to know about marine mammals under human care? And why doesn't South Carolina have any marine mammals under human care?
In South Carolina, my understanding of it is that years and years ago, and I might not have the dates exactly right, but I believe it was in the 1960s, there was a albino or hypoleucistic dolphin born named Snowflake. It was Snowflake or Snowball. And that dolphin, I think it was in the Hilton Head area, and the dolphin was really well loved by people because he was a special animal. And then it was collected by a group of people who were able to collect dolphins, and they brought it to an aquarium. And that was it caused a lot of public outrage because that animal was kind of a pride for them, a point of pride and love, and then all of a sudden he was gone. And so from that, you know, I mean, that's a shortened version of the story, but from that, you know, the several states, including South Carolina, made it illegal to have cetaceans under human care. And cetaceans, of course, includes whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Now, that law has been changed over the years to include all marine mammals and to not include all marine mammals, but as it is now, it's just cetaceans. So that's why we don't have any. What that gives us the opportunity to really focus on our wild population, because we have a lot of dolphins living here. So even though they're not inside our buildings and not inside our walls, you know, we have the opportunity to learn about them. And I think something that's valuable to remember about that is just because the dolphins are not living under our care doesn't mean that we're not responsible for their health out there in the wild. You know, it's easy to say, well, they're out there in the wild, which is so great. But what we're learning is that there's a lot of things that are not so great about the wild, and a lot of it is because of humans. So, you know, I've never actually lived in a place like Charleston, where there's so much pride in our wild local dolphins. And I'm so happy about that, because we should have a lot of pride in those animals. They're such an incredible part of our ecosystem. But with that comes our responsibility to them as well, and our responsibility to keep their habitat clean and safe. And, you know, not only, unfortunately, are they battling things like contaminants in their food and in their habitat, they're also battling people who love them so much. You know, I always say we can't love animals to death, especially an animal like dolphins. They're such charismatic species. And in all the different places I've worked, in all the different capacities I've worked with them, whether they were wild or under human care, people just love dolphins. They want to be near them, and they want to interact with them, and they want to see them. So they can go in some places they can go and see them under a controlled environment, under human care. And other times they just go out into the wild. And it's really cool to be able to observe dolphins in the wild, but a lot of people are unaware that laws exist to protect them in the wild. And I know that one of the things I love about the Low Country Marine Mammal Network is how you guys work to really educate the public on those laws. So it is actually illegal here in Charleston, as you know, in anywhere in the United States, under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, to harass dolphins. And that even includes getting close to them, feeding them, trying to pet them. And unfortunately, we see every single day at the aquarium, and I'm sure people see it all over Charleston, we see people breaking that law and approaching them, you know, getting really close to them, trying to pet them, trying to feed them. And I know it's out of love and excitement to see and interact with these animals, but people don't realize that they're really putting those animals in harm's way by getting too close to them. And, you know, people forget, because they're kind of portrayed as friendly, cute animals, but they forget that they're large, powerful predators that can be a threat to us, and also we can be a major threat to them. So I think, again, you know, it's important not to forget that responsibility we have to them, even though they're not under our care here. You know, the environment that we are still really influencing the environment that they live in, and it's our responsibility to take good care of them. And one of the ways I think that we do that is by learning as much as we can about them out there in the wild, and then teaching people about them. And I think you guys are doing a really great job of that. I'm so glad for what you guys do. I think you guys do really great work.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of that was very well said. I totally agree. They are in our backyard, so we must take care of them. All right, Meghan, so you did an amazing master's project, and I'm not even going to speak to it, and I'm going to let you take it over, but it's very cool. So please share a little bit more about that.
Well, thanks. I was really lucky to work with the Wild Dolphin Project, which is based out of Jupiter, Florida. And they have been studying, under Dr. Denise Herzing, have been studying Atlantic spotted dolphins in the Bahamas for years and years, since the 80s. So I was really lucky to be part of this team and research assistant for a short period of time when I was in grad school. And I studied, one of my biggest interests has always been in maternal behavior and the maternal and calf and mother behavior. So I studied specifically discipline and alloparenting. And so alloparenting is a fancy way of saying babysitting. And, you know, dolphins are really social animals. And in a lot of real social group living species, we see things like alloparenting where someone other than mom is taking care of the offspring. So I studied that, and specifically someone other than mom providing some discipline. And what I found wasn't a big surprise. Just that exists, you know, mothers are disciplining their offspring, and then other members of the group, of the social unit, are also disciplining calves. And that could be juveniles, it could be adults, and it was mostly adults. We even saw males doing that. And kind of it was really interesting to look at and kind of try and figure out, why would that happen? Why would someone other than mom, what would be their benefit, you know? And then you think about it, if you have a big group of dolphins living together, and you have a calf who's not listening, who's making a lot of noise, loud, you know, you know, he or she, that baby could attract predators, you know, to the group and put all of the animals at risk. So it really did benefit not only mom, but the other animals in the group to say, hey, be quiet, you know, which comes out in different ways in dolphins. And so just kind of interesting to look at that and to see how are they displaying them? Like they're chasing them, they're raking them, they're, you know, making an aggressive display towards them, and who's doing it. And we did find it was moms, it was males, it was moms, maybe other adults in the group. It included males, which is kind of interesting. We also have juveniles and calves were involved as well. So, and not too surprising because we do see that across other species as well. So kind of we see that in real social groups, but it's interesting to look at what's the motivator, whether is this the aunt, you know, if you will, of the calf, or is it just a member of the social group, and what's their motivator, and looking at the kind of evolutionary mechanisms attached to that. So that was the main focus of my study. I learned a lot about dolphins' behavior. I got to watch a lot of baby dolphins get in trouble.
That is so cool. Lauren was saying that she saw this like 2 weeks ago in the Kiowa River, and I didn't know that that's called alloparenting, or that's so cool. Yeah. She, I guess, so Step, who's a pretty old female individual who lives down there, she was babysitting Kai, who is Coco's calf. And so Coco was like strand feeding apparently, and Step and Kai, they like went way up the river, like out of mom's sight. And they got it all on drone footage, which was really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that is
it's amazing.
Awesome. And it's always be like other areas and different species doing something very similar, which is really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, and it's really interesting to look at the dynamics of that and like see who is babysitting for who, and when you can figure that out, then you can kind of figure out what's the motivator. Is it something like kin selection, which is like this is my sister's calf or something like that, or is it something like reciprocal altruism, like if I watch your calf, can you watch my calf later, you know, or something like that. Those calves are a handful. I mean, I got 2 little kids at home, and I need all the help I can get. So I can really relate to those dolphin mothers now that I have kids of my own. They have a lot of hard work out there.
So funny. So really quick, this brought up a question that I feel like I hear a lot, and I'm sure that you hear it a lot. People ask me about the different pods out here, and I always try to explain how we don't really have pods because our groups aren't quite large enough, but we do have these fission fusion groups. So when they do this parenting, are they creating a different fission fusion group, or is that something just completely different?
Oh, sorry, Brooke, I lost you for a minute.
Oh, it's okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So what I was saying is that I get asked a lot if they're like about the different pods that we have.
Sorry, Brooke.
No. Can you hear me?
I lost you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's totally fine.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Basically, all I was saying is with the local dolphins here, I get asked a lot about pods. And I've always kind of understood that our dolphins aren't large enough to create pods. They create these fission fusion societies. And so I guess my question is, how does this babysitting play into fission fusion societies? Are they splitting up their groups in order to do this, or are we seeing them within these different groups already?
I think it depends on what population you're looking at. And so I haven't studied alloparenting in this population, so I don't know for this population, but I think it really depends on the social dynamics of the group you're looking at. So for example, with the spotted dolphins that I studied, we saw a lot of known associates. You know, I mean, you have the bigger group, and that's why there's a lot of different opinions on how to classify groups versus pods and things like that. But I think you have to look at the social dynamics and see, okay, are these animals, are they known associates? Do they spend a lot of time together? Do we know if they're related to each other? And then you can kind of answer that question based on that. And what the other interesting thing about it is sometimes you'll see that change. And one of the things that the population that I worked with in Bahamas, one of the things that they found was that females specifically change their associations based on their reproductive state. So as juveniles, they'd hang out with other juveniles. And then as young adults, they'd hang out with other young adults. And then when they got pregnant, they would hang out with other pregnant females. And then when they had babies, they'd hang out with other moms with babies, you know? And I mean, it's very, very similar to humans, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're at a similar stage in your life, then you hang out with other people at similar stage in your life. So, so I guess it changes and it's kind of fluid based on the population, you know what I mean? But there are, you know, there's a lot of studies on this kind of thing in sperm whales, and that's either the population and, you know, social dynamic there, based on bigger needs like deep diving that calves can't do. So you see different mechanisms that play based on the location and the relationship between the animals. So I don't know exact answer for this population is a long way of saying, I don't know for this population, but you'd have to look at, but that's the interesting thing about dolphins and marine mammals in general, is that their social units and their social behavior is just so intricate and interesting. And one of the things about bottlenose dolphins too is that, you know, we see so many different groups of bottlenose dolphins around the world, and they're all so different and unique and adapted to their environment, you know, and their group size reflects that, their behavior reflects that. So anyway, sorry, that's just, I don't know the answer. It depends on all of those different factors.
Very cool. I'm so fascinated. I'm learning so much. I feel like marine mammals for me specifically is just like a whole different ball game that I never thought I would be interested in. Like I always loved looking at like small ecosystems. So I really like work and looking at all the different interactions. But like before I moved out here, it was always about kelp forests and coral reefs and like looking at nudibranchs and figuring out how they relate to their overall ecosystem. So I feel like I'm just like trying to be a sponge all the time and absorb as much information as possible.
I mean, I feel like no matter what, I mean, I've been studying dolphins for a long time and I'm always learning new things. I feel like that's a good way to be a sponge and to be open to learning all sorts of new things. I think that's very smart of you and very important, you know, because you can't only look at one tiny little thing. And that's what we learn over and over again, is that those ecosystems are just so interconnected, you know? So that's really cool.
Yeah.
There's just always so much to learn. So good to be a sponge.
Yes, thank you. That's all my questions. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
That's a tough, I'm trying to think of anything else to add.
The hardest.
No, just, you know, I think the only thing I want to add is I've been really fortunate in my career. And one of the things I've always tried to do is make sure people that, like, when I see a young person like I was wanting to work with dolphins, or, you know, a college student, you know, or something like that, you know, in my career, I did run into people who really discouraged me because they said, oh, everyone wants to be a dolphin. Everyone wants to research dolphins. You know, I had one person say, why don't you just research squid? Because everyone wants to work with dolphins. And, you know, I mean, not to say anything bad about squid. They're wonderful animals to research too. But, you know, I hope that people that are watching this know that you can do it. You know, I mean, I don't know how, if people hear that enough, you know, where it's like, yeah, you can do it. And if you want to, you will do it. You know, it takes a lot of hard work, and you have to get experience and work hard in school, and put yourself out there and work on weekends and work in evenings and work holidays and all of those times when, you know, people with 9-to-5 jobs, Monday through Friday, might not be working, but boy, is it worth it. And boy, is it rewarding. And I don't ever want to hear someone being discouraged by someone just saying, oh, everyone says that, but you're not really going to do it, but you really can do it, you know, and I'm proof of that. And there's a lot of other people that I've met in my career that are proof of that as well. So I hope that I can encourage people to pursue that dream. Again, even if that sounds corny, I really want to encourage them to pursue that and not feel like it's out of their reach, because it most certainly is not. Those animals need ambassadors. They need stewards, you know, like you guys at Low Country Marine Mammal Network, like us at the aquarium. You know, the animals, they need ambassadors like that.
Well said. Awesome, Megan. Thank you so much for taking the time to let me interview you and teach me more about what you do and your background. It's been so fascinating.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure.